Adaora gasped, realizing too late what she had walked into. Nnamdi wasn't offering help, he was planning to sacrifice her. But it was already too late. Nnamdi was too strong, and she was too weak. Before she could scream, a cloth was pressed to her face, and darkness took over. It all began in the lively town of Idogo, located by the banks of the Oluyo River. A young girl named Adaora struggled to make ends meet. Adaora, only 16, was tall for her age, with long, smooth hair that she kept tied in a loose bun. Her face was soft and innocent, with wide eyes that glimmered with hope despite the harshness of life. She lived with her widowed mother, Ifeoma, who had always been ill but refused to let her illness hinder their modest lifestyle. Every morning, as the sun rose over the sleepy town, Adaora would set off with a basket of bananas on her head. She walked through the crowded streets of Idogo, calling out to potential customers, trying to sell her bananas at a reasonable price. People from all walks of life would stop by, but Adaora's business was a constant struggle. Her mother's sickness drained their resources, and the young girl spent her days going back and forth between the local markets and home, trying to make a little more money for food and medicine. One warm afternoon, as Adaora made her usual rounds, her path crossed with a man whose presence could not be ignored. His name was Nnamdi, and he was a wealthy businessman, known throughout Idogo for his grand projects. Tall, with a deep brown complexion and a well-groomed beard, he walked with an air of confidence that matched his wealth. His sharp, calculating eyes observed Adaora, and a slow, calculating smile tugged at his lips as he approached her. "Bananas, young girl?" Nnamdi asked, his voice smooth and persuasive. "These are very fresh. How much for all of them?" Adaora hesitated for a moment, unsure if she could part with her whole supply. She had become accustomed to bargaining, but this man seemed different. There was something in his gaze that made her feel uneasy, yet intrigued. "For you, sir, I'll sell them for 9,500 naira, Adaora said cautiously, her eyes searching his face for a sign of kindness. Nnamdi raised an eyebrow. 9,500 naira. You are selling yourself short. I can pay you much more than that. Adaora's heart skipped a beat. She had never heard of anyone offering more than the asking price, especially not someone like Nnamdi, who appeared so wealthy. It was almost too good to be true. I don't mean just money, Adaora, Nnamdi continued, his tone softening as he leaned in closer. I can help you with more than just a handful of thousands. Adaora's eyes widened. She could that Nnamdi is a man of wealth and influence, but she never imagined he would offer help. Her mother's health had worsened recently, and the thought of getting her proper medical attention seemed like a dream. My mother, she needs a doctor, Adaora said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I don't have enough to. Leave that to me, Nnamdi interrupted, his voice steady and confident. I'll take care of everything. All you need to do is come with me, and I'll make sure both you and your mother never have to worry again. Adaora's heart beat faster. She was unsure. Something about his offer seemed too perfect, but the idea of her mother receiving proper treatment was too tempting. I will help you, Adaora, Nnamdi said, his voice growing softer. But there is a price. Adaora looked up at him, still uncertain. A price. Nnamdi smiled again, though there was a darkness behind his eyes this time. Don't worry. It's not something that will hurt you. But it will ensure that you and your family never suffer again. Adaora didn't know what to think. She only knew that she was desperate, and Nnamdi's offer was the lifeline she so desperately needed. She nodded slowly, her heart heavy with doubt, but the thought of a better future for her mother won out over her fear. Okay. I will come with you, she said softly. Later that evening, Nnamdi led Adaora to a lavish mansion on the outskirts of Idogo, a place she had never seen before. It was a newly built mansion. The towering gates creaked as they opened, revealing a sprawling estate with beautifully manicured gardens and grand statues lining the paths. It looked like a place reserved only for royalty, not a young girl who had lived in a small, modest home by the river. Inside, the house was just as grand. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceilings, and marble floors gleamed beneath their feet. Nnamdi led Adaora to a large sitting room, where a fire crackled in the hearth, casting shadows on the polished walls. Adaora could tell from smell that the house was probably just completed. "Please, sit," he said, motioning to a plush chair. Adaora hesitated but sat down, her eyes still wide in disbelief. Nnamdi took a seat across from her, his eyes never leaving her face. "You're probably wondering what I meant by a price," he said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "You see, Adaora, wealth comes at a cost. A great cost." Adaora's stomach churned. "What kind of cost?" Nnamdi smiled again, but this time, the smile was colder. "In order to gain wealth, one must make sacrifices. And I found the perfect sacrifice." Adaora's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Nnamdi leaned forward, his voice now a whisper. "You see, Adaora, I need someone, to ensure my wealth is secure. I've tried everything, business, investment, hard work, but there are forces more powerful than money. I need to make a ritual, and you are the one who will help me complete it." Adaora stood up, her knees trembling. "A ritual? What are you talking about?" Nnamdi's smile stretched into something sinister. "The ritual will secure my future. You will be my offering, Adaora. Your blood will ensure my success." Adaora gasped, realizing too late what she had walked into. Nnamdi wasn't offering help, he was planning to sacrifice her. But it was already too late. Nnamdi was too strong, and she was too weak. Before she could scream, a cloth was pressed to her face, and darkness took over. Adaora awoke in a cold, dark place. Her body ached, and her head spun. She tried to move, but something was holding her down. She looked around frantically, but the darkness was all-encompassing. Then, she felt a sharp pain in her chest, a pain like nothing she had ever experienced. Her eyes widened as she realized she was lying beneath the foundation of a new building, the ground cold against her skin. A voice echoed in the distance, and Adaora recognized it instantly, Nnamdi. He was speaking, but his words were unintelligible, distorted. Adaora tried to scream, but her voice was muffled. She could feel her life slipping away, but she couldn't do anything to stop it. Her last thoughts were of her mother, of all the promises Nnamdi had made, and how they had all been lies. As the darkness closed in on her, Adaora's spirit cried out. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew one thing for sure: this was not the end. The injustice of her death would not go unanswered. Nnamdi had made a mistake. Adaora would not stay silent. As the last of Adaora's life slipped away, she felt something strange. A presence. It wasn't death she was experiencing, it was something much worse. Her body may have been buried under the foundation, but her spirit was free. Free to hunt. Free to seek revenge. A whisper escaped her lips, barely audible: "You will pay, Nnamdi. You will pay." The darkness around her deepened, and a chill swept through the earth. The stage was set for the nightmare that was about to unfold. And Nnamdi, in his greed, had no idea that the price he would pay would be far greater than he could ever imagine. In the weeks following Adaora's tragic sacrifice, the grand duplex that Nnamdi had built stood silent and imposing against the skyline of Idogo. From the outside, the house looked perfect, sleek, polished, and every corner designed with opulence. Yet, beneath the pristine exterior, a dark secret festered. Adaora's spirit, once a young girl filled with hope, had been twisted by her violent death and the betrayal that had led to it. Her spirit was not at rest. Far from it. As night fell, a strange chill would descend upon the house. Tenants who moved into the building quickly began to notice it. At first, They thought it was just the cold air that came with the setting sun, or perhaps the strange noises that sometimes accompanied any old building. But as the days turned into weeks, the disturbances grew. The whispers, the cold drafts, the fleeting shadows, they were more than just sounds of an old house. They were the restless echoes of a soul denied its peace. One evening, a tenant named Chijioke, a young businessman new to Idogo, was the first to experience the full wrath of the spirit. He had moved into the duplex only a week earlier, eager to establish his presence in the town. The house seemed like the perfect place to live, a grand space that would give him the stature he desired. But as night fell, he began to hear faint whispers. At first, they seemed distant, almost like the murmur of a conversation coming from somewhere in the house. "Is someone else here?" Chijioke muttered to himself, getting up from the couch. He paced through the hallway, his footsteps echoing in the emptiness. The house, although grand, had an eerie silence to it, too quiet, too still. As he approached the stairs leading to the second floor, the whispers grew louder. It was as if the walls themselves were speaking to him. "Chijioke! Chijioke!" the voice called softly. He froze in his tracks. It was a woman's voice, soft but filled with an undeniable sense of urgency. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice trembling. The voice didn't answer, but the temperature in the house seemed to drop. Chijioke shivered, rubbing his arms for warmth, though he knew it wasn't just the cold air. It was something far more unsettling. Then, the lights flickered. Suddenly, a shape appeared at the top of the stairs, an apparition of a young woman in torn, blood-stained clothes. Her eyes were wide with fear, her expression twisted in a silent scream. She was staring directly at him. Chijioke gasped, stumbling backward, his breath caught in his throat. His heart raced, and he tried to call out, but no sound escaped his lips. He tried to turn and run, but the floor beneath him seemed to shift, as though the house itself was alive, holding him in place. In a desperate attempt to escape, Chijioke bolted toward the door, but before he could reach it, a loud crash echoed through the house. The door slammed shut, trapping him inside. "Help!" he screamed, his voice echoing against the walls. But the house didn't answer. Only the whispers filled the silence. By morning, Chijioke was nowhere to be found. His room was empty, the window wide open, but there was no sign of him. The other tenants, already uneasy about the strange occurrences in the house, whispered nervously. It wasn't the first strange disappearance, there had been others. But none of them had experienced the terror that had gripped Chijioke that night. In the following days, the hauntings grew more intense. Tenants reported hearing footsteps when no one was walking, voices murmuring their names in the darkness, and objects moving on their own. One tenant, Ngozi, a young woman who had recently moved in, woke up to find all the furniture in her apartment rearranged, though she had never touched a single piece. A photo frame had been knocked to the floor, its glass shattered, and the face of a woman could be seen behind the broken glass, her eyes wide open, as if staring directly into Ngozi's soul. Every morning, the tenants would leave the house quickly, unable to bear the growing unease, only to return in the evening to find more signs of disturbance. The house, once a place of luxury, had become a prison for its inhabitants, as though the very foundation had absorbed the pain and anger of Adaora's untimely death. The more they tried to ignore the presence, the more it tormented them. The whispers grew louder. The cold drafts turned to icy gusts of wind that would sweep through the house even when all windows were closed. The lights flickered more frequently, casting long shadows that seemed to shift and grow in the corners of the rooms. Doors would slam on their own, and footsteps could be heard pacing up and down the hallways late at night. But it was the scent that unsettled the tenants the most. It was faint at first, just a whiff of something sweet, almost like fresh fruit. But soon, it became overpowering. The smell of bananas, ripe and sweet, would fill the house, thick and suffocating, causing some of the tenants to feel lightheaded and dizzy. It was as if the house itself was trying to remind them of something, of a past they had no control over. As the hauntings escalated, rumors about the house's curse spread throughout Idogo. Word of the strange occurrences reached the local pastor, Pastor Idogo, a kind-hearted man who was known for his spiritual sensitivity. Pastor Idogo had heard the whispers of the spirit haunting the duplex but had dismissed them as mere superstitions. However, when he received a call from one of the tenants, he felt a deep unease. Something about this particular case felt different. On a cool evening, Pastor Idogo arrived at the house, armed with nothing but his faith and a deep sense of responsibility. The house was eerily quiet when he stepped inside, but the air was thick with tension. He felt it immediately, the presence of something otherworldly, something that didn't belong in this place. He moved cautiously through the rooms, his footsteps echoing softly as he prayed under his breath. As he entered the living room, the temperature dropped suddenly. Pastor Idogo could see his breath in the air, and the flickering lights above him seemed to pulse with a strange energy. He paused, his eyes narrowing as he sensed the presence of a spirit, an angry, restless soul. Without warning, the whispering began, louder this time, more frantic. Pastor Idogo closed his eyes and stood still, allowing the whispers to grow louder and more coherent. He listened closely, his heart pounding. "Help me. Help me. Make him pay." The voice was faint but unmistakable. Pastor Idogo knew then that this was no ordinary haunting. This was a cry for justice, a spirit that had been wronged, and a soul that demanded retribution. Opening his eyes, the pastor addressed the house in a calm but firm voice. "I know you are here. I know you are angry. But you must listen to me. Your vengeance cannot bring you peace. You must let go of your rage." But the house only responded with silence. The air grew heavier, and the whispers turned to shrill screams, making the walls tremble. Pastor Idogo felt a chill grip his chest, but he refused to back down. He pressed on, determined to learn the truth. "Who are you?" he called out. "What happened to you?" The lights flickered violently, and a shadow moved across the wall. A figure slowly materialized in the darkness, a girl with a pale, blood-stained face. Her eyes were wide with terror, and she appeared to be reaching out for help. The pastor's heart raced as he realized the identity of the spirit. It was Adaora, the young girl whose soul had been stolen by greed. "Help me," the spirit whispered again, her voice a mere breath. "Help me make him pay." Pastor Idogo understood now. This was not just a haunting, it was a quest for justice. Adaora's spirit had been wronged, and the man who had caused her death, Nnamdi, was the one who needed to face the consequences of his actions. Before Pastor Idogo could speak further, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. The sound of furniture being thrown around filled the house, followed by frantic footsteps. The pastor turned quickly, heart racing. In that instant, he knew that the battle for Adaora's soul had only just begun. The spirit's whispers grew louder, almost deafening, as the house itself seemed to come alive with a fury that could no longer be contained. "Make him pay," Adaora's voice echoed one final time, a promise of vengeance that would not rest until it was fulfilled. Please subscribe, like, and comment for part 2.